Over the last few days, there's been quite a bit of a fallout over the resignation of CIA Director General David Petraeus over an extramarital affair. But according to a select few, the affair with a woman who was not his wife is not the main issue here. The bigger problem, they argue, is the affair the general has had with the media. As a result, a whole lot of questions that should have been asked about Petraeus' job and about the attack in Benghazi, Libya that killed Ambassador Chris Stevens were not asked. Here's something we wondered back on September 18th.
But here's an interesting detail, and a puzzling detail. If you take a look at the U.S. State Department's website, which we did, it provides a list of all U.S. embassies, consulates, and diplomatic missions. Strangely, not listed the diplomatic mission in Benghazi. But a quick search on the site will turn up numerous other diplomatic missions in the U.S., the ones that we're taking part in.
Now, with the news of the alleged affair with General Petraeus biographer Paula Broadwell, we want to take a critical look at a few additional aspects of this case, including the security aspect. Questions are beginning to trickle out now about the unprecedented access Broadwell may have had, especially in light of some of the remarks she made back on October 26th at the University of Denver.
The facts that came out today were that the ground forces there at the CIA annex, which is different from the consulate, were requesting reinforcements. They were requesting it's called the Sinks in Extremis Force. A group of Delta Force operators are most talented guys we have in the military. They could have come and reinforced the consulate and the CIA annex that were under attack. Now, I don't know if a lot of you have heard this, but the CIA annex had actually had taken a couple of Libyan militia members prisoner, and they think that the attack on the consulate was an effort to try to get these prisoners back. So that's still being vetted.
Well, I want to talk about this specifically, that last statement she just said. That was news to a whole lot of people. Did not come out from the White House or the State Department, but from Petraeus' biographer. So let's talk now to Colonel Morris Davis, a retired United States Air Force officer and attorney, as well as a former prosecutor at Guantanamo Bay. Colonel Davis, thanks for joining us. Let's begin with this very interesting information shared about the Libya attack. I mean, the CIA has denied holding prisoners at the annex. Regardless, Colonel Davis, this information was shocking, right?
Yeah, I think probably the most disturbing part of this has not been the affair or the personal details. It's been the revelation about classified information potentially on Ms. Broadwell's computer and her access to information by her relationship with General Petraeus. And I think those are legitimate questions that need to be explored.
Yeah, absolutely. When you give someone without the same security clearances that kind of information, I think the whole country has the right to ask questions and be worried. But I want to talk to sort of a bigger picture here, Colonel Davis, about perception. There's a sense by a small group of people, again, that the extramarital affair is not the issue. It is the affair that General Petraeus had with the media. I want to play a couple of examples here.
Some pundits have suggested that perhaps, just like General Dwight Eisenhower in the early 50s, that you might at some point take off your uniform and run for president.
It's not the craziest assertion possible. He's the best known military man in the United States. He would certainly help Mitt Romney's credibility.
The most controversial thing is, I would say the real controversy here is he awesome or incredibly awesome?
Well, this is very painful, but the letter of resignation from the Director of Central Intelligence has been submitted.
So quite a few members of the media here devastated to learn the news. But before that, General Petraeus mentioned dozens of times, first as a possible presidential candidate, then as a possible running mate to Mitt Romney. Talk a little bit about this aspect.
Yeah, I did an article back in 2004 called Effective Engagement with the Media, because the military typically has been pretty flat-footed in dealing with the media. But there is that balance between engaging with the media and becoming too close with the media. And it certainly appears that General Petraeus may have crossed that line. And it's disappointing. I think, as a retired military officer, I think most of us, particularly today being Veterans Day, I think a lot of us look at other military officers, and when they do well, we feel like, one of us has done well. And when they do poorly, we feel like one of us fell down. So even though he was the director of the CIA at the time and retired from the military, I mean, I think a lot of folks, he'll always be known as General Petraeus, and it's a disappointment to see this kind of a failure.
Yeah, I mean, Glenn Greenwald, I know, argues that the swooning by the media over the general for the last several years illustrates a larger problem, and that is military worship. I know in his article, Greenwald refers to Michael Hastings' work and writes, Petraeus has left a string of failures and even scandals behind him. A disastrous Iraqi training program, a worsening of the war in Afghanistan, the attempt to convert the CIA into a paramilitary force, a series of misleading statements about the Benghazi attack, and the constant killing of innocent people in the Muslim world without a whiff of due process, transparency, or oversight. So, Colonel Davis, I mean, I guess I want to get your take. I know you're an attorney and you have a long military history. You're not a media expert, but you know, the media likes to refer to itself as the fourth estate, as another check and balance to the system of fairness and making sure things that happen in this country are right and just. Talk a little bit about that military worship and the history of it.
Well, we've always had that relationship going back to, you know, the Civil War and Ulysses Grant and General Eisenhower in World War II. And we've always had this fascination with military leaders, and we've kind of put them up on a pedestal. I mean, I guess it's regrettable. We've been at war for over a decade now. When you think about the wars, the two names that come to mind are McChrystal and Petraeus, who will forever have an asterisk next to their names because of what happened at the end of their careers. So, again, I think the public, I mean, you know, the military is fighting for the public, and the public has a right to information and to know what their military is doing. But there's got to be that separation. And certainly military leaders need to make sure they're maintaining good relations with the military, but appropriate relations. And I think the media has a duty to make sure that they remain objective and not get caught up in the hype.
Tell me how this works, because I know one of the kind of the new leads today that a lot of people are talking about is because of his retirement, General Petraeus may not have to testify before Congress about what happened this year, September 11th, in Libya. Talk a little bit about, you know, that kind of that angle of this story.
Right. And I've also heard talk today about whether he could face court-martial. You know, if they take this back to his period on active duty when his relationship began with Miss Broadwell, I mean, apparently the inappropriate part didn't begin until after, according to what I've read and heard. I think that's unlikely that they would take him back on active duty to pursue that. But it really concerns me the message that it sends. You know, the Air Force is in the midst of a sexual scandal at Lackland Air Force Base. The former deputy commander of the 82nd Airborne was in court last week facing sexual misconduct charges. And again, you know, General McChrystal, you know, the most famous general of modern time, to be caught up in this kind of scandal, even though the circumstances are markedly different, I think it still sends a message to the troops that, you know, it's not a good message. On testifying before Congress, I'm not sure if his resignation was effective immediately. He may assume is no longer a government employee. Still, Congress could issue a subpoena and require him to show up and testify. I think the administration is in an interesting position. You know, General Petraeus was a national hero, and for this scandal to erupt is certainly not favorable for the administration. How they choose to treat Ms. Broadwell will be interesting to see. As you may know, in the 90-year history of the Espionage Act, up until President Obama taking office, there were 3 people indicted in 90-plus years. And as of last week, there have been 7 indicted by the Obama administration. James Hitzelberger was just indicted for improperly possessing classified information, which is what is alleged that Ms. Broadwell had on her computer. So the administration, how they choose to deal with this will be interesting to watch.
Yeah, certainly a lot of unknowns at this point in this very transitional time as we've just sort of wrapped up the election. I guess at this point you just got to hope that the correct lessons are learned from this and improved upon. Retired Colonel Morris Davis, professor at Howard University School of Law, thanks so much.